Hello and welcome to episode 96 of the Boot Nerds podcast. JayMike, it's been a little while. What's going on?
It's been a while, my friend. Life is good here. We're finally back, as you guys may know. Yeah, we did a video on the Predator Freak Plus. That was recorded in 2020 because I had a kid, and now I might look a little bit more pale and a little bit more tired. That's because I am. But life is great, my man. How are you doing?
You know what I'm doing? As good as I can be doing. I'm currently wearing a hat, as I'm sure a lot of you have already pointed out. That's because I'm rocking a lockdown haircut and my hot water tank broke this morning. So
wow, can we please see the hot water haircut?
You know what?
Do it for me.
I have no shame on the internet. Why not? That's just pretty sweet. That's enough. But we're all good.
A lot of screenshots happening right now. Yeah, put the hat back on, please.
Yeah.
I know the feeling. I also, when my hair gets long, the receding hairline gets really obvious. So I just had to take it all off. That's what's old. Getting old is like. But bad hair days apart. Today we're gonna have a good day. We're gonna talk about the more or less brand spanking new Nike Mercurials that came out last week. And now we finally both have them in our hands. By the time this video drops, Unisport and I will also have released our review. So you, if you're watching this video, have probably seen both Josh's and my videos. But we're going to elaborate a little bit more and discuss a little bit more about, what these actually are, and whether we think they're a significant enough change for the Mercurial compared to the Vapor 13s. Obviously, I have here the Vapor 14. I also, where did I put it? There. I also have the Superflies. You don't have him yet, Josh, but it's just like it's a Vapor with a higher sock. It's the same. That costs 20 euros more. So there you have the.
That is the Superfly and Vapor comparison once again.
Yes. We're going to talk about that later because as you might have heard in my review, I'm a little bit mad about it. And I think it's not right. And Nike should fix it for the Superfly 9 or whatever they decide to call it. And maybe give the Superfly a little bit of rest. But first things first, Josh. Initial thoughts on the Vapor 14s compared to the 13s. I
mean, I feel like I made a very long video talking about the Vapor 14. And then the end conclusion was pretty straightforward. I think it's as good. I think it's hard to say that it's a huge step forward. I specifically said in my video it's a step over. Yeah, because it's very, very Mercurial-esque type thing to say.
How long did you think about that?
Right on the spot. Right on the spot. Okay. I don't script my videos. I'm not like Unisport.
Wow, that was below the belt.
Hey, I had to show my COVID haircut on the podcast. I can take a few shots if I want. Anyways,
carry on.
But no, I think they did a good job of maintaining the very high performance that I think they achieved with the previous gen Vapor, because that really to me is objectively one of the best football boots ever made in terms of lockdown and responsiveness and traction. It's really impressive as a technical achievement. And despite looking similar, especially the base silhouette, I would say, they've changed almost everything that they could have in one way or another, but still maintain, I would say, the same level of performance. There's an argument to be made that it's maybe a little bit less comfortable because it loses some softness, but you gain back some of that raw kind of barefoot feel that people miss from the Tahitian synthetic days of the Vapor and the Superfly. So it's a smaller difference than I was expecting, considering how much different the upper actually is. But it's a good football boot. I think if you like the previous gen Mercurial, there's nothing to hate on with this. They didn't increase the price in any way. And I happen to think it looks very cool, where again, everyone's got their own opinion on that.
Yeah, I've yet to come, by people who really like hate this with a passion. Of course, it's a Mercurial. It looks sleek. It has a really freaking cool silhouette. You can say what you like about the actual colorway, but this is, obviously this is more out there, by choice.
Obviously, Nike wanted to. I don't want to interrupt you, Jay, but can I just say, like, this is a launch color. People always have their own strong opinions on launch colorways, but this is also Nike, and specifically the Nike Mercurial. If the previous generation was anything to go off of, we'll have like 60 colorways in the next 3 weeks. So don't worry too much about the colorway.
And you know, they obviously, yes, there are some options with the whole component thing, see-through top Duragon WT layer. But you also have the option to just make it, you know, monotone if you want. So we're gonna see a lot of options there. Obviously, we can also go in at one point and recreate that very popular video we did where we created our own colorways of the Mercurials. Of which mine never showed. Thank you, Nike. So I'm not sure I want to do that again. Imagine if we do it and they lose it again. That would be a wild thing. But anyway, I totally agree with what you just said there. I think the term step over is actually a brilliant way of like coining the phrase because you know it's super spot on. We talked about just before we got started that you know it's a step. It's a little bit of a step forward. It's not a major step forward. It's more like, you know, it's not going backwards. Maybe going a little bit forwards if you ask us at least. But with a step over, it's like, yeah, it's more or less the same boot. It feels pretty much by and large the same way. But when you do a step over, you also, you know, the ball moves a little bit forward. So what I feel is the best way to describe this, with my experience at least, is that I was left with the impression that Nike had sat down, like I said in my review, they'd sat down and said, okay, everyone loves the Vapor 13 and Superfly 7. The fit is great. People have said when we created this version from the 12, don't change it. Don't change a single thing on the boot. Then they changed a couple of things and people loved it even more with the high tenacity yarns and stuff. So they sat down and thought, okay, 2 years have passed since we introduced a knitted vapor. We need to make a big change. We need to keep the cycle of innovation, all that stuff. So we have to change up the boots. But how can we change up the boots with a significant enough change to make sure that we can go out and talk about the innovation while keeping it as close to what the Vapor 13 felt like? You know what I mean? How can we change it without changing it? Mm-hmm. That's basically what this feels like. So they made it a synthetic upper, and it's a super nice upper. It's very thin, it's close to the ball, and you said it's slightly more rigid at first, breaks in nicely, but it gives you more that of the Mercurial feel, how I see it. It's more of that raw one-to-one sensation that I think a lot of people who have known Mercurials before the 12 and 13 on the Vapor, that they've kind of come to expect, right? With that said, I also think, you know, it's a little bit of a bold move because the 12 and the 13 of the Vapor has been a boot that has kind of lured people in who wouldn't typically wear Mercurials. Because it's so comfortable, it's so easy to wear. It's just a very no-nonsense boot. And the fact that this is synthetic, it's still very comfortable, but just a little bit, you know, it takes a little bit more dedication to get as soft and as pliable, as comfortable as this one. In my experience, at least. So that might throw some people off. On the other hand, it's a brilliant move because now we don't have the Merc and the Phantom GTs, which are basically the same boot with different widths. What's your thought on that?
I like the fact that it now offers something different from a Phantom GT completely. There's really not too much to compare between the two. I think we have to look at this release as kind of a non-traditional upgrade from any brand because we look, obviously Vapor 14 comes out, how does it compare to the Vapor 13? And I don't think that the goal here was to necessarily make a better version of the Vapor 13. I think this was an attempt at maintaining the performance characteristics of the Vapor 13 that are so high, arguably higher than any other football boot that you can buy right now, but then bringing back some of that kind of core DNA of the Mercurial series with the new, I guess, Vaporposit material that they've developed here. So I think it's almost a better comparison to say this is a successor to a Vapor 10 or a Vapor 11. And in comparison to those, I think there's an argument to be made that maybe the touch still isn't as raw because it's not that just straight up Teijin synthetic.
I agree.
But it's certainly more comfortable. And I think all of the performance characteristics are there. More aggressive traction, super responsive. It's a really well executed Mercurial. And I think that's what's important. It's also a big risk from Nike because you look at the Flyknit Mercurials and I guess the whole sock boot craze that has kind of taken over the entire football boot industry. That's something that they started themselves in 2014 with the Magista and the Superfly. So for them to now go away from the thing that they basically popularized, I guess this is their attempt at, again, shifting in a different direction. And we'll see if this, I guess, has the ability to maintain the same level of hype and popularity over an extended period of time. And I didn't mention this in my review video, but I did mention it in the launch video. There's an argument to be made that it's pretty similar to what Adi have done with the X Ghosted series, going back towards synthetic with this kind of semi-translucent upper, right? And I would argue that this is a softer, more comfortable feeling synthetic versus what's on the X, which has a much more plasticky feel.
Really?
I would say so. You don't think that feels more plasticky than this?
Oh, it definitely feels more plasticky. But I just came out of recording the my X versus X Ghosted versus Mercurial Vapor 14 boot battle video, as we call it.
Yeah.
And I've been walking around with the X's on one foot and the Mercurials on the other foot to like really figure out which upper is softer, which do I like better. And I actually, yes, this is more plasticky. It's a bit more foamy, and you can kind of hear that it's a bit more plasticky, but especially on the 0.1s, I definitely feel that they're softer. They also have less structure, so lockdown isn't as good in these, I feel, as it is in the Merc, because it's really good in the Mercs, right? But from a out of the box comfort perspective, I feel these are slightly softer and easier to get into.
That's interesting.
But yeah. When they're broken in, I don't think it really matters that much because I mean these are going to soften up nicely. But yeah, that was my experience at least. What I also found was, and I noticed when I did the comparison, was that these are wide compared to the X's. Like the midfoot is significantly wider. They're more generally appealing to more foot shapes, I would say, than the X's.
Yeah, I kind of got the same impression. I don't think the shape has actually changed much at all from the Vapor 13.
Oh, it hasn't. It's the same shape.
And that's what I was kind of very surprised about, is I was expecting some really ugly creases and folds given the same shape with this new kind of more plasticky synthetic material. And I didn't get that. I was really surprised at the out-of-the-box comfort because you said it yourself. It does feel a little bit different the first time you put them on. But after 3 minutes, once you get over this I'm wearing new Mercurials thing in your head, they feel very similar to the full Flyknit upper on the Vapor 13.
Yeah,
from a comfort standpoint, it's difficult to tell a difference. I think when you compare it to the fit of the X, though, I still think one of the major downsides of what they've done, especially on the X Ghosted 0.1, is that lacing system. It needs to run deeper. It needs to be slightly more central. And I think that's the reason why you feel so much tightness through the midfoot, is that's because that's the only area where there is any tightness because of how they've designed that lacing system. If it had a lacing system like the Mercurial, I'd be really curious to see how much better that would fit, because I'm confident it would fit that much better.
And that's kind of the thing that for me, I totally agree with what you say. For me, the X is currently the better speed boot out of the two, even with the new improvements to the Mercurial, simply because it's so tight fitting. It puts you on your toes a little bit and basically feels like, the more minimalistic sensation that the first F50s gave us, the first Mercs gave us. But as a football boot in general, this is way better. So the X is a little bit more niche, and I think, with the weight increase, a slightly wider fit, softer material, this is better football boot, almost as good for speed. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that fit is something that's hugely important in any kind of football boot, and especially when you're talking about the speed category where you want that one-to-one feel. Yeah. And I think it's kind of interesting from a very boot nerd's perspective. If we look at the history of the Nike Mercurial series, both the Vapor and the Superfly, the one thing out of all the things they've changed over the years, which is pretty much everything, the one constant has been the central lacing system and the depth of that central lacing system, which plays a huge factor in adjustability, lockdown, and fit. And I think that's where a lot of brands, Nike included, we see it with the Phantom GT and its kind of weird off-center design. That's really the downfall to that boot in terms of fit. The laces just ran up the middle, had a nice depth to them. That upper would wrap your foot significantly more closely. And I think that's where you do notice, I would say, a pretty big difference between the X Ghosted Plus and X Ghosted 0.1 right now. The Plus, despite being laceless and losing out on that adjustability, it ends up feeling slightly more natural with the evenness of the tension across your foot versus the 0.1, where you really do have this kind of pressure point through the middle, which does make for better objective performance, but it doesn't feel as good.
Oh, I like it better because I feel that you feel the foot being like squeezed down, and it's kind of that's a good level of pressure for me, because to me that's a sign that it's working. But I know what you're saying, like from a
the pressure is good, but it's not evenly distributed. On the Mercurial, you get consistent tightness across the entire boot. On the X, it really does feel focused through the midfoot.
I agree. And again, I said the lockdown in the X is better. It's not as how should we say? It's not as aggressive in places like the midfoot or in the heel, where you have these big foam elements that really go in and squeeze your heel in place. So it's not as claustrophobic, but it feels more effective across the board as the whole boot is just made to work in holding your foot in place, instead of just like one centralized piece here and in the heel. Mm-hmm. I think we agree.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know. I think what Nike did well with this new Mercurial is it does have that technical wow factor that I think we always expect from a new Merc, which has always been kind of the industry leader in terms of introducing new football boot tech. For me, what it really reminds me of is I think back to the Mercurial Superfly 1, where that's a football boot that when it came out, it really blew my mind in terms of what it achieved technically. Unfortunately, it just didn't feel anywhere as good as it was cool. And I feel like this is maybe the best case scenario for that Superfly 1 concept with the thin synthetic upper. I don't know. I would love to see them do some Superfly remake colorways on this new Vapor. I think that would be really cool.
Pretty sick. Another thing we should probably discuss is you said something. This feels more like the natural successor to the Vapor 10s and the 11s. Tell me if you agree here, but you could argue that the Vapor 12s and the 13s were kind of a necessary step away from that really minimalistic synthetic feel in order to develop a technology so Nike could take the next step in synthetic boots. It feels like, and that's where the conundrum comes in, because, they stepped away from synthetic, created something that's hugely popular and kind of made it difficult for themselves to go away from this, although the end goal was potentially always to come back to this, which is with the learnings from working with Flyknit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. I would love to see, and this is something that Nike never really revealed throughout the entire previous generation of Mercurial. We heard so much about high tenacity yarns, but we never really got a good look at what that actually was or what that pattern looked like.
We did. Well, you can actually see it.
You can sort of see it, but I look at.
You're right.
I look at the construction of that Flyknit upper, and then I look at this grid pattern that you have running throughout this entire Vapor 14, and that to me looks like the high tenacity yarn element. And then they just reinforced around that, so that's become the core element of the upper. I said it in my review, it's kind of like a deconstructed variation of the Vapor 13, where the liner is more or less the same. They just turned it into a softer kind of microfiber material, where previously it was a harder synthetic. So your soft material is now on the inside, and then your more structured synthetic materials on the outside, where on the Vapor 13 Superfly 7, it was kind of the opposite way around. And I think that's why this upper ends up feeling so similar to the Flyknit one, despite technically not being a knitted synthetic material, is because you have that soft microfiber liner, which is always the one element of uppers that people don't seem to care about because you can't see it.
But the liner is so important. The funny thing, and which I think is also one of the reasons why some people will prefer the Vapor over the X's, is that the X doesn't have a liner. So it's just that it's that really raw synthetic feel in the X's. Also gives that very like one-to-one sensation. There's nothing between your foot except for a very, very thin piece of synthetic, but there's not the liner to make it nice and cozy and feel good against your foot. And that's something that Nike have kept. They claim it's the same liner, but they've changed it so it's a little bit more fuzzy. It's a little softer now. But you know, we were in the whole tech walkthrough with the Nike Global guys, and they said it was the same Avail Q liner as on the 13. Although it feels pretty different, but
it's definitely different.
I agree, yeah.
But I think it's funny because you're right. If you compare it back to Vapor 10s and 11s and a lot of the Teijin synthetic Mercs, I think the X Ghosted synthetics are more along those lines in terms of having that kind of plastic, no liner type sensation, right? Where what I think they did well with kind of a return to synthetics for the Mercurial series is maintaining, again, the comfort level of something like a Vapor 13, where, I mean, I didn't know that was necessarily possible, and I don't want to hype this up as like the most comfortable football boot ever, but I was genuinely surprised at how comfortable it was, considering how much plastic now makes up the entirety of the upper. Also, huge credit to Nike for making the liner of a football boot the flagship feature. Because that's been the one thing that I think nobody has ever cared about in the history of football boots. And a lot of people always ask too, why don't brands go after doing more high-tech things with the insoles? We saw Adidas try it with the Boost insoles. And ultimately it comes down to you can't see it, so people don't care. Mm-hmm. But Nike did a really good job of, hey, if we make the upper translucent and then we color the backside of the liner to highlight all these different areas, which upon closer inspection, and you've sat down with Nike, you might know a little bit better. I can't see the visible transitions in material from one color to the next. So I'm not sure if this is like one consistent layer of material and they've printed colors on top, or if it's physically different layers of material.
So the thing is that when you say the liner, so the whole Vaporposit package is actually 4 different layers. So you have the liner on the inside, which is the gray piece. I don't know if you can. Yeah. People can see it out there. That's the Avail Q liner, as they call it. That's basically the thing that makes it nice and fuzzy against your foot. On top of that, you have all the colored elements. That's the synthetic called Titan synthetic, as you also mentioned, which is the colored stuff. And they're actually little. You can see on the boot, there are these little like green pieces of, I would call it tape, but like bonding elements holding the pieces together. Obviously, they've also been glued together, right? They are different elements, but as far as I understand it, they're the same synthetic, but they're just, you know, they've been painted in different colors to highlight different things. So the top, the outermost part, the orange part on the Vamp, as I know, is a little bit thinner and a little bit softer compared to the one on the midfoot, the pink one. And then we have the purple bluish one here. That's called the Speed Band. As far as I get it, and as far as Nike said, that's the same Titan synthetic as we see the pink and orange piece is, but it has a nylon band sitting underneath. So between the Avail Q inner liner and the Titan synthetic, there's a nylon band to give a bit more like of a stronghold in that area. So yeah, it's the same, but then that's what it is. And obviously we have this engineered mesh that's basically just like a flat knit as it looks, and of course the Duragon coating on top. But yeah, it's a very funny thing to, you know, they have a synthetic, but they also have something on top of the synthetic, which I think is the new thing that I haven't really seen used to that effect before, at least. So it's a very impressive construction. What I'm mad about, because I'm also mad about a few things, and we should probably talk about that. I am mad about the Speed Wings, because in my opinion, you know, they have this call out on the insole. It lists out all the different components and it says Speed Wings. And I look at the Speed Wings and I think, okay, they look pretty cool. And I think they do look pretty cool. They look fast. And then I look more at them and I put the boots on and I think, okay, they might add some sort of, you know, reinforcement, a structure to the heel. Fact is, they don't.
No, this is, for anyone that hasn't handled the boots in person, it's kind of the equivalent of like when they do the stick-on CR7 logo on a football boot.
Yeah.
It's really just sitting on the surface. It's just like the Nike swoosh on this boot. It's maybe a little bit of a harder material and it's a little bit thicker than that. But all it's really doing is kind of outlining the edge of the internal heel counter? And is there purely for cosmetics? I mean, maybe there's some kind of aerodynamic benefit. I don't know.
It's like you know when you know you got a lot of car problems, right? So when you have a car and they have all these like fake exhausts or fake vents and stuff, it's just like this is a fake vent. Why do you call it out? Why do you claim that it's some sort of speed wings? That sounds super cool. Well, then there's the heel tap. I think it looks outstanding. It looks super cool. I love heel taps, especially ones like these. Yeah, okay. F50 Adizero vibes, totally. Mizuno Mercurial Neo vibes. Yeah, I get it. But it looks cool. It works. But it's slippery, man. I don't know if you've like tried to actually pull it when you put the boots on. You can, but either I don't have strong enough fingers or it's just too slippery. So it doesn't really. I still put my finger in the boot to get it on.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of complaints about that, which I was kind of a little bit surprised about. I like how it looks. I've always been a big fan of the heel tab look. And again, there have been some subpar ones in the past. This, I think, doesn't have really much structure to it, and the way they constructed it, it doesn't have any hard edges. So as long as it's not rubbing against bare skin, I don't foresee this being an issue with discomfort. I certainly didn't have any problems. But in general, I like it. Yeah, in terms of actually being able to slide the boots on by way of this pull tab, I would be a little bit concerned about like constantly pulling on it. Just because it is directly attached to the heel liner as well, and I wouldn't want to damage that. But I don't know, it doesn't bother me that it's there in any way.
Right. I get what you're saying. It's not on the Superfly, though, the heel pull tab. But the Superfly is just, other than that, a Vapor with a sock like we mentioned in the beginning. That's a problem, Josh. That is a big problem because once again, this is a lazy football boot that you have to pay 20 euros more to get. Is it a nice football boot? Yeah, absolutely. Do I enjoy wearing it? Absolutely. It's nice. I might even prefer I can't believe I'm saying that. I might prefer the sock-like fit you get around your ankle compared to the Vapor. I'm still deciding on it.
Yeah.
But is it a Superfly? No.
This really was like I hate to enable companies to be lazy with new models, but this was their kind of like hall pass to be a little bit lazy with the Superfly. Take the Superfly 7, change the graphics package, change the shape of the collar, give us a few little minor differences, call it a Superfly 8, and have a Flyknit Superfly and a Vaporposit Vapor.
Yes.
It would have been great. And it also would have satisfied the people that are like, hey, I don't like this new Vaporposit material.
I want this. Exactly. Yes. But therein lies the problem, Josh, and has been lying for a couple of generations now with the Mercs, is that the Superfly these days, it's not special anymore. I know we've rambled on and on about it for many episodes, but it's the same problem. Like, Superfly is special. You pay a premium, it has to be special. On the X's, yeah, they're very similar, but you get a laceless construction, you get a different upper, you get a nicer finish, and you know those extra. Yeah, you pay 60 euros extra. Is that too much? Probably, but at least you get something. You get some extra value. Here you get a flipping sock, and 20 euros. That it's not a lot of money, but it's still kind of I feel it's a little bit of a piss take from Nike's side. Pardon my French. Mm-hmm. What I feel they should do is exactly what you said. Do something unique with the Superfly. Set the two boots apart, or if they want to continue going down this road, call this the Vapor 14 DF, like they do with the Phantom GTs, and save the Superfly name for when you have something stupidly cool. If they want to reintroduce that Air Mercurial prototype we saw last summer, you could call that a Superfly. I'd be happy with that. Just something that is out of the ordinary, extra cool, and people are hyped about. Are people hyped about this? No chance. It's just a Vapor with a sock.
No, and I think if we look back at when the Superfly was first introduced, obviously the way football boots were marketed at that point in time, the very early days of social media, the very early days of like consuming content on the internet, it was a different task to try and market a Vapor and a Superfly, which is why I think the overwhelming amount of marketing content we saw from Nike at that time was about the Superfly, and the Vapor kind of took a back seat. And it did in a lot of ways kind of seem like an afterthought in terms of what it actually was from year to year. Where now with Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all these different means of social media that they have, guys like me and you, doesn't it just seem logical to just have two different models of Mercurial? It's already the most popular line of football boots in the world by quite a large margin, I would say. So why not try to like extend the lead a little bit? Hey, we have this new synthetic vapor posit material to compete against the X, but guess what? If you still want to knit it up, or we have that option as well. So they're kind of covering all their bases, and they have so many guys in Mercurials, some of the best players in the world. Like it really wouldn't be a big deal to market two different Mercurials. But they just choose not to do it. I don't get it.
Yeah, nah, me neither. It's probably the biggest missed opportunity of 2021 already, and it's that's a big shame. Last year it was the Human Race Pret Mutator 20s. This year it's going to be Nike once again insisting on making the Superfly a Vapor 14 DF. Shame on you, Nike. I'm a little bit, not a little bit. I'm actually very disappointed here because it could have been something wicked, and it could have been something mind blowing. And it's a good football boot. I actually like it quite a lot. But I don't like the potential was just for so much more. And that's disappointing because we know that Nike have it in their, in their locker to do something crazy like that.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Overall, I'm happy with this. I'm happy with where Nike are going. And while it's not the biggest change in the world, it also feels like a good platform for really doing something stupidly cool next time they update it.
Yeah, and look, I think especially with this boot in particular, we saw pros training in blacked out prototypes for a very long time, like probably almost a year. And COVID, I'm sure, probably had something to do with it. This might have been planned to launch a little bit earlier, for all I know. Because we did have a weird 2 months of very few Nike releases for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But I think all things considered, it's pretty impressive how they changed so much, but the boot still feels very refined. And I think with the Vapor 13 coming from the Vapor 12, they looked very similar, but there was clearly a pretty big jump in terms of evolving that technology. And considering that they've gone with something that is in a lot of ways all new, it feels very well put together. Like it's still one of those football boots, just like the Vapor 13, where I can't really pick out too many things that I think could be hugely improved over what they've done. Speed wings, totally unnecessary. Some people don't like the heel tab. I don't think that the spine was entirely necessary, but as I talked about in my video, I think it's hiding some ugly transition points and seams with this new synthetic material because it is a little bit more rigid than the Flyknit. But other than that, it's as close to, I don't want to say perfect because I think that's wrong, but I think given the concept that they started with, they pretty much ticked all the boxes and there's not too much to be mad at.
Yeah. Yeah, and it feels like the evolution that the Mercurial should have taken. Like this feels more like a natural evolution of a Mercurial compared to this. This was a great football boot, but this feels like where the Mercurial should be in 2021.
Yeah.
Not the Superfly though. The Superfly should be something. But let's not be more mad about that than necessary. Josh, we also have a few questions before we end the show here. We have one from David King. What are your thoughts on Adidas doing remakes with original materials versus Nike doing modern boots designed to look like their old boots?
I love what Adi is doing with these remakes. I still think that they are too expensive for how frequently they seem to be putting them out lately. But the execution has been amazing. 9 out of 10 of them have been really good.
Absolutely.
Like not much to complain about. Like those new blackout accelerators that didn't really get a lot of love. Those are sick. Like
they're amazing, right? But the problem is that, and I'm sure you were the same when you got them. It's like you look at them and like blackout accelerators. Are you kidding me? That sounds amazing. But then you get them in your hands and you realize you've had what, 6? This is number 6.
6, yeah.
6th remake in what, 3 years? That's too many remakes of the same boots, and it still costs 350 euros.
Yeah.
Like,
but I said this in my video too, Jay. They're still selling out. So like what?
That's a crazy.
Like if you really want to decentivize any brand to lower their prices on limited products, don't buy it. But how do you not?
Don't buy it from all the other retailers. Buy from us.
Unisport can sell out. Everybody else, nah.
Yeah, sorry guys. I agree. I think it's lovely to see what they're doing, but I think we need a little bit more variety in what they're remaking. And obviously, I would like to see from Nike, what they did with the T90 Laser ones. I would like to see more of that stuff. I think the whole future DNA idea is cool. I don't mind it. And I think it might be a nice balance to have some of that, some remakes, not just like remakes all the time. Because people also, you want to keep the hype. You want to keep it really, really special.
I think with Nike, I just said it like I'm from the UK.
Yeah.
I think with Nike, if you look at a lot of their classics over the years, they've been in the world of synthetics a lot longer or a lot earlier than what Adi did. So if you look at a classic Predator of any generation, kangaroo leather is still the base material, and kangaroo leather, no matter how you spin it, it's always going to feel good on feet. Pair it with the modern sole plate, it's pretty much a home run for people that are into that type of thing. Where I think with Nike, like, it would be very brave of them to remake a Vapor 3. It would be very brave of them to remake some of these classic models, like remake a Superfly 2 and see how people like it. Like an OG Superfly 2, it's too risky. Like they're not boots that have aged well. And you can argue that a Predator Accelerator is just too bulky for 2021, but it still feels like good.
You mentioned the Vapor 3, you son.
I love the Vapor 3. I think that's one of the most beautiful football boots ever made. I love how it looks. They didn't fit me. I had a pair as a kid. I hated them. I wore them 3 times. But I love the way that boot looks.
Yeah, it would be fun to see how it does in today's day and age with the new tooling on. I wouldn't get my hopes up, but yeah, it would be fun to see at least. But I think you're right. I just think that if I had to choose between the two, I would choose Adi's way of actually doing remakes, but I think somewhere in between would be a nice balance.
Yeah,
between,
and again, just to use, not that Adi has done everything 100%, right? Look at that F50.6 Tune-It remake, right?
Yeah, that was
completely flopped. Just kind of a weird, terrible football boot, because that's not an upper that has really aged that well. And I think you'd have that same sensation with a lot of Nike remakes.
Potentially, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. We have a comment from Bong.Day. It says, _brother. That's a pretty cool way of starting. Brother, I see this as just a minor update relating to the Predator. Nothing significant. I expected Predator 21 plus. Thank you for share video _ So yeah, moving on. Rocky 015, would you guys ever do a live/in-person podcast? And I don't know about you, but I would love to do it. The problem is that right now we're talking across the Atlantic on a phone connection because Josh lives in Canada, I live in Denmark. And it's morning where you are, it's afternoon where I am. It would be a little bit tricky. I mean, we could meet in like what?
Where's the middle
of the Atlantic? But yeah, it's
on a ship somewhere.
Yeah. In these times, doing a live thing, traveling halfway across the globe is probably not a thing that's going to happen, but, let's see. Maybe
I mean, when we're together, we're definitely going to do it. And I know we talked about maybe doing one when we were both in Japan, but we legitimately had almost no free time. So,
and when we were sleeping because we were jet lagged it might happen. So Mizuno invite us back to Japan and we might go and do it. Anyways, our regular viewer Alejandro A. Best, as someone who's worked in a soccer store, and Jay, I'm sure you are familiar with personalized boots with your name on the side. A few years ago, the name was stitched, but recently it's printed. Why? I think stitch name looks better and fancier, and it's also more durable. I don't know, Josh, if you have any comments for that, since you also worked at a football store.
Yeah, we didn't have any of that.
All right.
I think I've told plenty of stories of putting names and numbers on shirts, which I absolutely dreaded at all times. But as far as customizing boots is concerned, number one reason why they've gone towards just sticking on a sticker basically is it's cheaper.
It's cheaper. It's
way
easier
cheaper.
and it's cheaper, and the big brands started doing it for the pros, and everyone wanted it for their own boots, so we went away from stitching.
And I think it's become an issue of structure as well, because once upon a time, football boots were made out of a solid piece of leather, and if you put some holes in the leather at an area that wasn't really that structural,
this way, can you?
No. And like I remember back when like Superfly ones came out with all the Flywire cables and embroidered names customization was still a thing, and all I noticed when I first saw that is like, oh my gosh, they just punctured I don't know how many Flywire cables with that, you know? And it's now an issue when it comes to warrantying the boot as well.
True.
I don't know. It's just one of those things that I don't think the demand is significant enough to justify having a giant embroidery machine that you need for football boots.
You're right. And I mean, one can argue that on the Superfly 2, puncturing a few Flywire cables didn't really matter because there were 1,000 of them. But, you know, yeah.
I don't know. That was never my thing, though. Did you have
that was
custom?
a joke, by the way. Come on.
Yeah, I know.
Is it that early in Canada?
It's that early. It's that early, Jay.
The dad jokes are coming thick and fast now. We have another one from David Cox. Any idea when another colorway might come out of the Predator 21? And I know exactly when it comes out.
Great answer.
That was the question, right? Do I know? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he knows. He knows. Yeah. Jay knows everything.
David Guarin Vasquez, when are the Mercurial reviews coming out? You're watching it, so you're welcome. And finally, Christopher Croucher. Hi, fellas. What's up, my man? Why have a lot of pros ditched the X-Ghosted and gone back to the 19, the white pinks especially, the 19 pluses or the 19.1s? Some have even swapped to the Nemesis horrible energy color. What are your thoughts? Keep up the good work. I'll let you go first.
I think it has to do with familiarity, right? I think we as boot nerds, we have, and a lot of people are like this, you have your favorite from like 5, 6, 7 years ago, sometimes even longer. And you have this like amazing memory in your head of how great this football boot was. And you want something back that's just like it. And then when you get it back, or when you even try and go wear the OG, you're like, oh, wow, this is not as great as I remember it. And I think with pros especially, consistency is everything. And when they've been given these knitted mesh-based synthetic materials for basically the last 5 or 6 years now, and then you have them change back into something that's completely different, they're not immediately comfortable, and or will never be.
And that's the thing. I think, this didn't feel like a traditional speed boot, and the X-Ghosted is just such a radical change in terms of comfort from this, and I think this is what, it's not going to be as big of a change from the Mercurial Vapor 13s, but it's kind of the same thing that, they had a really generally appealing upper here, and then it changed. So there are some people who chose to wear the X because it was so comfortable, not because it's a speed boot, that will naturally not like the current development and will want to stay in this, or, the Nemesis, which for all its, colorway flaws on this one, does feel more like the X19.1 than the Ghosted. So.
Yeah, and I said this in a recent X-Ghosted video. I think that now, if you look at the entire Addy lineup, if you don't count any laceless boots, which some people just aren't into the laceless things, I think the most comfortable boot Addy makes from their main line is the 0.1 Nemesis now.
I agree.
It just has the most comfortable feel. And on the topic of Mercurial, since that's what this episode is about, that's where you could argue Nike did a good job with this upgrade, is if you like the Vapor 13, you're probably still going to like the Vapor 14 despite the significant change. Where X19.1 to X-Ghosted, it's such a difference that you might just hate what they've done with the X-Ghosted if you really like the X19.
True. I think that's the big difference. You said most comfortable Addy boot is the Nemesis. Did we forget the Copa? I'll probably point to the Copas.
Well, if you don't like the laceless thing, I think Copa Plus is probably really comfortable, but I don't think the 0.1 is that great.
We agree. Fair enough. If you don't have any further comments for either the Vapors or this X-Ghosted thing, I think we're going to close down the 96th. Do you?
I do have a comment. I just thought of a comment. Can we just talk about this whole Dragonfly thing really quickly? because I thought that was a very, like, Nike's really good at coming up with cool stories, but this whole Dragonfly thing, that was a weak story tie-in.
The Dragonfly thing is because they went in and they looked at the construction of their wings, and they were like, that's a composite material, their wings. And a composite material is basically, and I know this because they told me, I was also like, Dragonfly, what on earth are you on about? The composite material is where you take like different components in a material, and the sum of those components become more than what the components can do on their own. And that's kind of what the Dragonfly's wings do. So I don't think it was like 2 years ago they had the cheetah, now they have to get something even cooler, so they chose a Dragonfly. I think it's more from like a...
I forgot they've actually used actual cheetah,
but
which
that's
makes
a little
sense.
bit of a downgrade, right? Cheetah,
Dragonfly, bug.
It is what it is. but yeah, I think they could have chosen a better name, but that's it's a cool story, bro. It's a nice name, Dragonfly Superfly.
Who wouldn't want a Dragonfly Superfly?
Yes,
so cool.
If
imagine I think we've talked about this before. Imagine going back like 20 years and showing anybody football boots of today. But like, imagine me like, this is the Nike Dragonfly Superfly. Like, what the heck is that? Like, just as somebody who knows nothing about football boots, that's the most ridiculous name ever.
I would, Is it worse than Predator Freak Plus? Which is also kind of like when you don't know about football boots, something being called Predator isn't very nice, and then it's called Freak Plus on top of that. Predator is another one that to the unassuming person, it's a little bit of it's as cool as it can be as a name. It is also a little bit unfortunate Predator
at times.
Freak, yeah.
Like Predator 18 plus. Probably not the best name looking back. Probably not.
I forgot about that. Happily forgot about that. I guess that's a discussion for another episode. Because frankly, I think I have to go home, take care of the child now. But good discussion, Josh. If you have any questions or comments on the new Mercs or the X-Ghost, just whatever's on your mind, let us know in the comment section right down below. We're going to pick it up in the next episode. And with those words, don't forget to go subscribe to the Boot Nerds podcast by clicking the white bubble in the middle of the screen. You can go subscribe to our channels. Also click the bubbles next to our heads. And with those words, I've been JayMike, and I approve this message.
Thanks for watching.
Ciao.